Velkommen til min kanal Zainabu. Den her dokumentarserie er et forsøg på at sætte ord og tanker på nogle af de bekymringer, jeg har, når det kommer til hele den teknologiske udvikling, og mere specifikt den måde teknologiens manipulerende og desorienterende mekanismer påvirker os alle sammen. Tænker du nogensinde over den verden, vi lever i, og hvordan den kommer til at se ud i fremtiden?
What you're about to see is the first ever living robot that was just created by researchers in the US. This is it, the Xenobot. Under 1 millimeter in size, it's unlike most robots in that it's not made of any plastic or metal, but entirely of organic cellular material. It can move forward, turn around, sometimes spin in circles, and if you flip it on its back, it will flip itself back over. It's a human-made robot, but it's alive. Now, you might be asking, what exactly is a living robot? And that would be a perfectly reasonable question, especially given the fact that it's being deemed a brand new life form that has never existed before. But before we can actually understand what it does and what that might mean for the future, we have to understand what it actually is. Researchers essentially wanted to figure out if they could take real live cells and make them behave in a way that the researchers wanted them to, much like a robot made of other materials would do. So they took two different types of frog cells, both skin and heart cells. Heart cells naturally contract while skin cells don't. So the idea was, if we can put skin cells and heart cells together in a specific way, maybe we can come out with a functional structure that can move. And that's exactly what the researchers tried to do. If you take a look at this video of one of their successful creations, you can see that the blue cells are non-contracting skin cells, while the green and red ones are contracting heart cells. So this particular combination of cells will give you the motion you're seeing in both the animation and the actual result below. But it would have taken a long time to get here, so using computer scientists and evolutionary algorithms, a supercomputer would have made millions of iterations of these combinations of skin and muscle cells to figure out which combinations make the best movements. And evolutionary algorithms would have worked much like natural selection to improve upon existing models to figure out what works better, ultimately ending in what would be deemed the most fit versions. And so the researchers then use these computer-made designs to make the real thing. And by that, it means taking one cell at a time and sticking it to the next one and then to the next one. It's an extremely laborious process. Luckily, cells have the natural tendency to want to stick together, but it still meant a human technician going through a really intense process one bit at a time. So what exactly makes them robots? Well, once the scientists understood which combinations would make a cell move in a straight line or make this one spin in circles, they could then tell the supercomputer, we actually want this type of movement or this type of action. How do we get that? The supercomputer calculates it and then gives them a design that will ultimately create that action. So if the Xenobots are designed in the exact right way, they can move in the exact way we want them to. And so we end up with cellular organisms that have been designed by humans to act in predictable manners, like robots, which is what the Xenobots are, really. But the interesting, or kind of freaky part, is related to something called emergent behavior. While we might understand how a single cell works, when you put a group of them together, sometimes emergent behavior or properties come about. So the single cell itself can't do this thing, but when it's in a big group, it does. And us humans, assuming we're all humans here, are perfect examples. We have trillions of cells in our body, none of which have on their own consciousness or the ability to think, but when you bring them all together in this particular combination that is a body, consciousness emerges. What surprised the scientists about the Xenobots is that sometimes they would change their movement. They might turn around and go back from where they came from, or link up with another Xenobot and travel around, or if they were cut in half, they would put themselves back together. So truth be told, these Xenobots weren't completely predictable, but that was part of the research and the study. If we were to put combinations of cells in certain ways and get action that we were wanting, what types of other emergent behaviors could we see so we could better understand the whole system and better make Xenobots in the future? And that's what makes Xenobots so different from your traditional robot, which is made up of individual dumb parts, sorry robots, don't want to offend you, that when put together make up an intelligent whole, whereas the xenobots are made up of individual cells that have the inherent qualities of life and in and of themselves are smart. Cells communicate to make tissue, which make organs, which ultimately come together to make us. So what does it all even mean? Well, the long-term implications are pretty massive. I mean, you don't need to be worried about a robot uprising anytime soon, and we can't even really tell these xenobots to do anything yet. But the more we learn about them, the more potential there is, and there's some pretty cool suggested future uses for xenobots. Picture this, a swarm of xenobots made using your own cells that are deployed internally in your body and sent to your brain to help remove a brain tumor. And because they're your own cells, your body won't reject them. Or picture cleaning up artery plaque in your body using xenobots. This generation of xenobots was used only using skin and heart cells, but the future ones could be used using photoreceptors or other types of cells to help them navigate and understand their environments. Why not build some with components from blood vessels, nervous systems, or sensory cells to make a rudimentary eye? Outside of the body, picture something like the ocean, which is littered with our plastic pollution, in particular microplastics. Maybe these xenobots are used to target and break down microplastics or collect them and clump them together so that they can be more easily removed. And the great part is, because they're biological, they naturally break down. So in this study, the xenobots lasted between 7 to 10 days before they stopped functioning and broke down. And while these suggested uses are definitely far down the line, they show the massive potential of these xenobots. Unlike plastic and metals, which in your body, as an example, would be detected as foreign objects and it would cause a lot of problems. So what does the future of this look like? Well, one of the biggest question marks right now is the ethical implication. Once we start creating these robots that have cognitive capabilities and can sense things, and we're selecting them based off of their abilities to think and do things, who is going to be protecting their rights? Do they become organisms that ought to have rights in the first place? If these are organisms that are actively participating in our world, and maybe some can feel pain because it's a benefit to their function, or maybe they can start to think, what does that mean? Where do we draw the line? The researchers did acknowledge this as uncharted territory, and the fact that we should be having these discussions in the early stages of technology like this so that the public can understand, so that the governments can make informed decisions, and that we can all feel positive that we're doing something good in the world with it. Personally, I found this research to be so fascinating, and it led me to be excited and also terrified at the same time. You know, the potential to address climate change with something like xenobots, or health and safety of the human body in delivering drugs. These are all amazing things, but at what cost does it come? How do we prepare for what else these biological robots could be used for? And how do we address the concerns that they could very well be considered living organisms made of human cells, made of other animal cells, that are biological? You know, we've had these conversations about artificial intelligence and robots, and at what point do we deem them to have rights for themselves, or to have feelings and those kinds of things? This is just going to skyrocket that problem into another level, because these beings are actually made of biological cells. So fascinating, so interesting. I am really curious what everybody else thinks, because to me it's exciting and terrifying. I think it can be both at the same time. I don't think the robot apocalypse is anywhere near, but I do think it's something to keep in the back of our minds, just in case. Just in case one of the xenobots are watching this video in the future, though I love you, and I promise I never questioned your good intent. I hope this video was useful and interesting to you. I had a lot of people asking to go a little more in depth about xenobots, because it's a huge discovery and breakthrough, and I thought it was worthwhile to understand a little more of the intricacies of it. Let me know if you have any other questions, but comment down below. What do you think of this technology? Are you nervous? I want to hear your opinions. I'm so curious what everyone else is thinking. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and I'll message you back, and subscribe for more interesting science videos. Peace.
The Matrix. Vi har nok alle sammen set The Matrix, men er det ren fiktion, eller er det allerede en del af den verden, vi lever i? Man må sige, at Big Tech har vanvittige planer for fremtiden. Vi kender alle sammen Elon Musk, opfinder og medejer af en række højteknologiske virksomheder som Tesla og SpaceX. Elon Musk arbejder blandt andet på at fremstille en mikrochip, som kan implementeres i hjernen på os. Herefter vil vores hukommelse kunne downloades ned på en harddisk, præcis som et computerspil. Og man snakker om, at man så eksempelvis kunne genopleve minder fra ens fortid. Det lyder da vanvittigt.
So why is linking up our brains to computers something that Elon Musk is interested in? Musk does say that this device in the future could allow people to restore limb function, cure blindness, but then also even download their memories to robots. What kind of data does Neuralink have to actually back up these claims, or are they just really the dreams of somebody who is interested in the future and sees possibility around every corner?
These are the dreams of somebody who sees possibility in the future and dreams about a lot of big things. Look, if you'd like to learn more about what's called artificial superintelligence, I have a great book for you. It's called Superintelligence, written by Oxford scientist Nick Bostrom, where he talks about the practicality of kind of what Musk is seeking here. What Musk demonstrated was an implant running in a pig. He actually showed 3 different pigs, one that had the implant removed, he said safely, one that never had it, and one that currently had it. And he showed that this was indeed possible to monitor some of the brain activities.
Imagine being able to unlock doors or a car with just a wave of your hand. Well, that's exactly what one Utah man can do thanks to some tech underneath his skin.
Oh my, that is really going the distance.
Ben Workman is one of a few people around the world who are turning to cybernetic implants. Simply speaking, they're different kinds of computer chips that let you do different things.
When Elias Brotberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID. And he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
You like to touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, a grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Yeah, it's all in the chip. So I use it like to get around the building.
Buy snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's buy some snacks.
Exactly.
So I can't open it.
No.
Okay.
So what I need to do is I need to first blip my chip and it will log me in. And from there I get access to the fridge.
Popular TV shows like Black Mirror have imagined chips as part of a dystopian future.
Install ingrain procedure with local anesthetic and you're good to go.
In Sweden, the microchips are already here.
The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards,
which have made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden.
But the massive increase in surveillance post did not only breach the privacy of Muslim communities, it went far deeper.
Hvordan vil du egentlig have det med at få en mikrochip implementeret i hjernen? Og hvordan vil du have det med at leve i et overvågningssamfund, som er styret af teknokrater og kapitalister, som der skriver deres egne regler og love? Der er sådan set ingen grænser for den mængde af data, de kan indsamle om dig. Ingen grænser for, hvad de kan bruge dine personlige oplysninger til, eller hvem de videregiver dem til.
Alright, so first of all, I think I'd like to clarify that 6G as a technology does not exist today. Right? It's more like an aspiration, vision for researchers that we are putting forward. As operators roll out 5G around the world, we're starting to think about what 6G will look like. And we can imagine and think that 6G technology will be deployed 8 to 10 years from today, right? So going back to your original question, what is 6G and how it's different from 5G? 6G will be a connection of technology that will enable a hyper-connected future, right? A future where people are connected with faster links, but people are also connected with the physical environment where they operate and with the cyber environment where our data resides, right? A number of devices, 500 billion devices are foreseen to be connected by 2028. This will include anything from cars to drones, robots, construction machinery, factory equipment, medical devices. All these devices will generate massive amounts of data, much more than possible today, to enable this close, responsive, and fast interaction with humans.
So corporate surveillance is basically happening all the time and in ways we don't even think about on a day-to-day basis.
When people talk about corporate surveillance, what they mean is when a company collects information about an individual, often when that individual is not necessarily aware that that collection is occurring.
I mean, every time you browse the internet, every time you use an app on your phone, even driving your car or just being out in public, oftentimes corporate surveillance is occurring.
Social media companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter collect a lot of information, but they're not doing it to sell to third parties. They're mainly collecting this information to give content to other users, but just as importantly, they're using it to create profiles of individuals to advertise towards. Now, while this is generally the model that is supported on the internet, I think there's a lot of concern whether or not all this data collection really is useful to better advertise.
Alt det her er altså ikke fiktion. Implementering af mikrochippen i os mennesker er allerede en realitet flere steder rundt i verden.
The process is simple and swift. A pinch of the skin, and in a matter of seconds, the chip is inserted. The transformation is complete. As for the pain,
I barely felt it.
But even in this nation of early adopters, not everyone is racing to get chipped.
Feel less human. I will feel like a robot. I mean, so much more data can go into this, when it's in your body.
Society is kind of built in a way that to interact in modern society, you don't really have a choice about your data, and often you can't correct that collection of information. You can't ask for it to be deleted. You can't necessarily port that data to somewhere else in some instances, and that all this information that's collected is retained basically forever, and we don't know how it's going to be used in the future, and it can manipulate us in terms of how we vote potentially. It can manipulate us in terms of what we purchase, and it can also be used to restrict our options.
To me, this data collection really equates to power, and there need to be checks on what companies can do with all of our livelihoods, our information, the photos of us that get sent around the world for tagging. In particular, I start worrying a lot about things like smart homes and smart doorbell cameras that either connect directly to law enforcement or can be subpoenaed in court. Meanwhile, the big tech CEOs, go in front of Congress and they're asked, are these devices recording us all the time? And somehow are able to convince the public that they're not. But as somebody who has helped to build these kinds of technologies, I can tell you they absolutely are.
The US intelligence state bloomed in the wake of them. Government oversight increased through a vast clandestine network of phone and web surveillance. In 2013, Edward Snowden, a former contractor for the CIA, leaked to the media that US spy agencies had built an intelligence-gathering colossus since the 9 attacks that conducted extensive internet and phone surveillance of millions of Americans.
I wrote a letter to our CEO asking him to make certain promises to us. I wanted to make sure that he would never collect data without anybody's permission or consent. I wanted to make sure that he put constraints on facial recognition. It was surprising then when the CEO called a meeting for the whole company. It was an optional meeting, and he said, that we would be there to discuss the issues in the letter. And he pulled the meeting together, and of course the whole company showed up. And he ended that meeting by telling us that he had no intention of putting constraints on these kinds of things, and that's when I knew I had to quit.
Selv Elon Musk advarer os omkring alle de mekanismer, som er i spil her.
In the past, it has been bad, but not something which represented a fundamental risk to the existence of civilization. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization, in a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that. I think we should be really concerned about AI, and I think we should. AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive, because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. And normally the way regulations are set up is that a whole bunch of bad things happen, there's a public outcry, and then after many years, a regulatory agency is set up to regulate that industry. And there's a bunch of opposition from companies who don't like being told what to do by regulators. Anyway, it takes forever. It's not fun being regulated. It's not, it can be pretty irksome. But in the car business, we get regulated by Department of Transport, by EPA, and a bunch of others. And there's regulatory agencies in every country. In space, we get regulated by FAA. But if you ask the average person, hey, do you want to get rid of the FAA and just like take a chance on manufacturers not cutting corners on the aircraft because profits were down that quarter? I was like, hell no. That sounds terrible. So, I think even people who are pretty extremely like libertarian free market, they'd be like, yeah, we should probably have somebody keeping an eye on the aircraft companies, making sure they build a good aircraft and good cars and that kind of thing. So, I think there's a role for regulators. That's very important. And I'm against overregulation for sure. But man, I think we better get on that with AI pronto. So there'll certainly be a lot of job disruption. Because what's going to happen is robots will be able to do everything better than us. I'm including, all of us, Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to do about this. This is really like the scariest problem to me, I'll tell you. So I really think we need government regulation here, just because this is, ensuring the public good is served. Because you've got companies that are racing, that they kind of have to race to build AI, or they're going to be made uncompetitive. Essentially, if your competitor is racing to build AI and you don't, they will crush you. So then you're like, we don't want to be crushed. So, I guess we need to build it too. That's where you need the regulators to come in and say, hey guys, you all need to really, just pause and make sure this is safe. And like when it's cool and and the regulators are convinced that it's safe to proceed, then you can go. But otherwise, slow down. But you kind of need the regulators to do that for all the teams in the game. Otherwise the shareholders will be saying like, hey, why aren't you developing AI faster? Because your competitor is. I'm like, okay, we've got to do that. Anyway, so it's like, there's like something like 12% of jobs are transport. Transport will be one of the first things to go fully autonomous. But when I say everything, like the robots will be able to do everything, bar nothing. Yeah, probably in 10 years, more than a half of new vehicle production is electric in the United States. And China's probably going to be ahead of that because China's been super pro-EV. I don't think a lot of people know this, but China's environmental policies are way ahead of the U.S. Like their mandate for renewable energy far exceeds the U.S. I think sometimes people are under the impression that China is either dragging their feet or somehow behind the U.S. in terms of sustainable energy promotion, but they're by far the most aggressive on Earth. It's crazy. In fact, a coalition of Chinese car manufacturers just wrote the Chinese government to beg for them to slow down the mandate because it's like too much. They need to make 8% electric vehicles, I think, like next year or in 2 years or something. They can't physically do it. So China's by far the most aggressive on electric vehicles and solar. But that's a common misperception that they're not. There's one Google search way to figure this out, by the way. It's really pretty easy. So, and then in 10 years, man, I think, yeah. So half of all production, I think, will be EV. I think almost all cars produced will be autonomous in 10 years. Almost all. It will be rare to find one that is not in 10 years. That's going to be a huge transformation. Now, the thing to bear in mind, though, is that new vehicle production is only about 5% the size of the vehicle fleet. So you think about how long does a car or truck last, and they last 15 to 20 years. So before they're finally scrapped. So new vehicle production is only roughly at most 1/15 of the fleet size. So even when new vehicle production, say, switches over to electric or to autonomous, that still means the vast majority of the fleet on the roads is not. It'll take another, 5 to 10 years before that becomes the majority of the fleet becomes EV or autonomous. But if you were to say go out 20 years, overwhelmingly things are electric, autonomous, overwhelmingly.
Fully autonomous?
Fully autonomous.
So no one will have to touch the steering wheel if there is one?
There will not be a steering wheel. In 20 years, it will be like having a horse. People have horses, which is cool. But
so having a regular car will be like having a horse. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. And there will be people that have non-autonomous cars, like people have horses. It just would be unusual to use that as a mode of transport.
Yes. All right. Now, let's talk about the energy piece and rooftop solar and storage.
So first of all, it's important to appreciate that the Earth is almost entirely solar powered today, in the sense that the sun is the only thing that keeps us from being at roughly the temperature of cosmic background radiation, which is 3 degrees above absolute zero. If it wasn't for a sun, we'd be a frozen dark ice ball. And the amount of energy that hits the sun, that reaches us from the sun, is tremendous. It's 99% plus of all energy that Earth has. Then there's this energy we need to use to run civilization, which to us is big, but compared to the amount of energy that reaches us from the sun is tiny. So it's very easy. It actually doesn't take much. If you wanted to power the entire United States with solar panels, it would take a fairly small corner of Nevada, Texas, Utah, anywhere. You only need about 100 miles by 100 miles of solar panels to power the entire United States. And then the batteries you need to store that energy to make sure you have 24/7 power is 1 mile by 1 mile. One square mile. That's it. I showed the graph of or image of this where this is what 100 miles by 100 miles looks like. It's like a little square on the U.S. map. And then there's a little pixel inside there, and that's the size of the battery pack that you need to support that. Real tiny.
Det lyder sindssygt fascinerende alt det her. Men tænk lige over det et øjeblik. Hvor stor en betydning det har på, hvordan big tech-giganterne og forskellige korrupte regeringer rundt i verden kan vælge at udnytte de uendelige muligheder, der er. For uanset om de her teknokraters handlinger er etisk forsvarlige eller ej, så har vi intet at skulle have sagt. Fordi det er dem, der ejer produktet, og derfor også dem, der ejer dine personlige og private data. Spørgsmålet er, hvad fremtiden vil byde os af samtlige ufrivillige byttehandler og deals, hvor vi kan benytte os af samfundets digitale ydelser og tjenester, som fortsat bliver en større og større del af det samfund, vi opvokser og lever i.
one brush swing. You want a cookie with that? It's on the house.
Sounds awesome. See you tomorrow, Jojo.
See you, Lacey.
Oh, saw your boy in the fire hat just now. So cute.
Yeah, he's really something.
Hey, Lacey. Bets, it's great to see you. You too. House Pancakes. He's hilarious. Such a funny cat. Just the best.